There's a lot of no good, sorry movies out there. The devil all the time. 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 I don't really know how to say the title of this movie. There's no comma. I guess it's The Devil All the Time. Just really quick, The Devil All the Time. Anyway, I don't really know how to review this movie. First of all, it's not at all what I was expecting. That's not always a bad thing. Sometimes you sit down in a theater and the commercials make you think one thing and then the actual movie is something totally different. Typically, that's not a good idea because if you get someone in the door of a movie through a commercial and they go into a movie with certain expectations, rarely do they leave the theater going, that wasn't at all what I expected, but man, it sure was good. It just doesn't happen that way. If you came to see a movie that you thought you were going to get, it's because that is the movie that interested you, and then you got something else. And typically, that's not a recipe for success. I guess I thought this would be like a cross between Lawless, a movie with Shia LaBeouf and Tom Hardy, and Frailty, an old Matthew McConaughey movie. It's not. It's not either of those things at all. And in fact, it's something totally different. If you Google this movie right now, it'll tell you that it's starring Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man, Robert Pattinson, who's about to play Batman, who most of you know probably from Twilight, and Bill Skarsgård, who is the guy who plays It. It tells you that it's starring all these people whose careers are doing really well right now, and maybe that's enough to get you in the door. But it's all kind of misleading. Bill Skarsgård is in the first half hour of the movie. Tom Holland doesn't really enter until the first 45 minutes are past. And Robert Pattinson doesn't come in until maybe an hour into the movie, and he's probably only in the film for about a 45-minute run. And of that 45 minutes, he's not in every scene. He's not in a lot of scenes. He's in several at best. And so saying that anyone stars in this movie, Tom Holland more than anyone is the main character of this film. But like I said, he doesn't come in until 45 minutes into the movie. Before I get too far into it, I'm going to say that this is not a spoiler review. I'm going to do my best to avoid spoilers. I may drop one at the end, but if I do, I'll give you plenty of warning and let you leave before that happens. Listen, from beginning to end, it's just not a good movie. And I think there are a couple reasons for that. Number one, the first 45 minutes of the film are downright hard to watch. There's a lot of scenes that are difficult to watch, and not necessarily difficult to watch in the way that a Saw movie is difficult to watch, though there is a little bit of that, if I'm being honest. It's just a lot of bad. It's just like nothing good happens. And even if you can survive that first 45 minutes where you're just meeting these awful people who do awful things in the name of God, even if you can get by all that, the rest of the movie doesn't get any better. You think after the first 45 minutes, if you can suffer through the first 45 minutes, you think for a moment that, okay, now we're in the meat of the story. Now our character is going to get going. We're going to see him kind of fix all these problems. We're going to see him kind of struggle with these issues, but probably come out on the other side a better person, something like that. But no, you don't really get that either. It continues to go poorly for basically everybody in the film. And almost everybody in the film are just awful people. Now, not all of them are, but the ones who are good, they don't have the best endings. And then even our main character, the way his story ends in this movie, and I won't say this in a way that gives away too much, it's not really satisfying. As soon as I saw this film, I knew it was likely a book before it was turned into a movie. So I gave it a Google, and sure enough, it was. And you can kind of tell it when you're watching the movie. There are so many characters that come in and out of this story that you think that there's just simply not enough time to flesh any of them out. You don't get to spend enough time with any one character, or maybe you only get to spend enough time with one or two characters, but really you don't spend enough time with the rest of the characters to really understand a whole lot about them. For example, there's a narrator throughout the film who will come in and he will explain things randomly. And this is a real problem for Sebastian Stan's character. Sebastian Stan's character is a cop, but he's like a shady cop. He's definitely got some bad things going on behind closed doors. And you see like one scene of that, you get the idea through it. The narrator literally has to like tell you like this is who this guy is, and he sure does have a problem here, and this is why he's motivated to be this way. A movie should never have to rely on the narrator to tell you things. It should be able to express it through the actor's actions, through the story. It should give a character enough time that you understand who they are and why they make the decisions that they do. But you never really get that with Sebastian Stan's character. He's just kind of a cop who's there, who makes bad decisions. You don't fully understand why he's in the position he's in to begin with. And even if you do, it's because some narrator just came over and told you. When you're receiving a story, there's no enjoyment from that. Just having some narrator spoon feed you things into your mouth, that's not what I want from a movie. I want to be able to grow with a character. That way I form some sort of attachment to them. That way I care about their character. And Sebastian Stan's character is not the only one that's done this way. Frankly, there are several characters that you wish you had more time with, but you just don't get it because there's only so much you can shove into a 2.5-hour film. And I think that's one of the biggest issues of this movie. It would have done much better possibly as like a mini series or maybe a regular size series. That way you would have had more time to grow with characters, to understand motivations, to feel sorry for certain characters. Maybe some of these characters that came off as just awful human beings had like a really messed up childhood or something that led them to being the way that they were. I'm not saying that that excuses the actions of certain people when they're just awful people, but it does at least give them a little bit of humanity. That way they're not just some monster that you can't connect with at all. Look, frankly, there's just a lot of stuff in this movie that's really hard to watch and you don't feel anything for any of the characters. But I think the worst part about it is it thinks it's a lot smarter than it is. The movie is frankly really predictable, and after you get through the first half hour, you kind of go, yeah, I know where this is headed. You can see characters moving in certain directions, and you're like, well, I know that there's another group of characters who do this, and I know that this character's going through this. The only way for all these random characters to meet is for this certain thing to happen, and sure enough, that's what happens. They meet, and you can pretty much guess the ending of how those encounters are going to go. Listen, it should have been a much smarter movie. It should have left you guessing. But when nothing but bad things happen in a film, you can pretty much assume in any given scenario that nothing but a bad thing is about to happen. There's even one moment where like a good person is about to do a bad thing, and then that character's like, you know what, I shouldn't. And right as that character is making that decision, something awful happens to them. And it's not even surprising, like you knew it was going to happen. I don't know, I guess more than anything, this movie was a disappointment. It set it up from the commercials like it was going to be something else, or at least in my opinion it did, and it didn't live up to that. It didn't give you enough time to be with any character in particular to really grow some sort of connection with them. There's really only 2 or 3 characters you can even remotely connect with anyway. And then nothing about the movie catches you off guard. It's all just bad things happening, sometimes to bad people, sometimes to good people, but rest assured something bad is going to happen. It's going to be because they have some sort of backwards idea about God. Listen, it's just not near as smart as it thinks it is, and frankly, the whole movie was a disappointment. So I'm going to give this one about a 23 out of 100. The only reason it gets a 23 is because the acting is actually pretty good. All the actors do a good job with their characters. You just don't get enough time with them. And then aside from that, of course, the cinematography and everything, it looks fine. It's not like a really old film, or it's not real grainy, you know. It's not cut up. There's nothing wrong with the filming of the movie. There's nothing wrong with the camera work. So, I mean, for the acting and for the way the film looks, for those reasons, it's okay. Listen, bottom line, maybe it's just not my film. 23 out of 100. If you don't want to hear a minor spoiler to the end, I am going to spoil one other small thing that somebody might say, well, what about the very end? What about the very end? That kind of, no. Anyway, if you don't want that very end spoiled, go ahead and click away now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, all the good stuff, and I'll see you on the next one. Now, if you don't mind hearing the very end, stick around. Okay, I'm going to assume they're gone. So at the very end, Tom Holland is basically the only character who lives through it, aside from 1 or 2 other side characters that you don't get a whole lot of time with anyway. And so, yeah, like he does kind of get rid of a lot of the awful people. At the same time, you don't really know if the police are chasing him. You don't really know if the story's going to end up any better for him. And the only thing that you can kind of hang on to think that, okay, maybe this one guy made it out okay, is at the end he's picked up by this hippie looking dude, and the camera only shows him for a split second, but you can tell what they're going for. He's got long brown hair. He's got a brown beard. He looks like Jesus. And he kind of says a few nice words to the kid. And then it talks about how the kid just feels relaxed and Tom Holland just kind of falls asleep there and he thinks about what his future might hold. It goes through these different scenarios about who he might grow up to be or what might happen to him. But there's really no solid ending there. It's trying to say that maybe God was in control the whole time and that everything happens for a reason. Maybe it's got some ham-fisted moral to it all like that. But frankly, it just doesn't land. You've seen so much bad happen at this point. There's no reason to assume that anything good is going to continue to happen to this guy. He gets lucky several times. Frankly, he should have died too. But he got lucky, so if anybody has a little bit of luck in this film, it's this guy. But still, you don't see anything good happen to him. He's literally hitchhiking with nothing but a backpack to his name, and the police are probably after him. It's not set up for him to do well at all. Frankly, if that's the best the ending could do, it doesn't feel very good. You don't even know if he's ever going to see his family again. Listen, an ending doesn't have to be happy for it to be a good ending to a film. But this film just didn't do enough for me that warranted that ending or that made that ending make me feel any better about everything that I had just suffered through. Anytime I pause a movie like 4 or 5 times throughout to see how much is left, it's just not a good thing. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Continue to support me, like, share, comment, you know the stuff. Do all the stuff down there. Leave some comments. If you've seen The Devil All the Time, let me know what you thought about it. Am I wrong here? Because I would love to hear some different takes about this. It's on Netflix. If you haven't had a chance to watch it and you think you can suffer through it, listen, it's definitely not a movie for kids, okay? But if you think you can handle it, give it a watch. Let me know what you thought. If you did like the movie and you disagree, just remember, don't get mad. It's just one man's opinion. Thank you.